the beauty of any situation when you're managing is an event is the ability to appear invisible to the experience. Right? I'm not the experience. In some fashion, your team's not the experience. The experience is what people are there for. Right. Your team is performing such a vital role, but they're doing it in silence. I always tell my team, I said, regardless of what's happening at an event and how many dynamics are happening or how many bad things are happening, we are like a swan. We're nice and cruising on top, but underneath, our feet are kicking away.
What's up, y'all? It's your boy DJ BuzzB.
And it's your boy JKD.
And from the time you hear the voices, you know it's only up from here. It's the Up From Here podcast. And we're back with a very, very, very special one. This one is for the event planner enthusiasts. Mm-hmm. Now, just to give a little context to our guest here and how important and how valuable this podcast is going to be. There was a good portion of my 17-year career where me being the person I am and wanting to do things the right way, we know what the wrong way looks like. A lot of us do know what the wrong way looks like. Doing things the right way and finding a book or a video, something that could teach me, okay, these are the steps to doing it the right way. And I didn't want just any book. I don't want an EDM book about how to do soca fets. Right. I want a Caribbean-influenced book. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I found the book in human form, and I brought him here to share them with all you guys. Oh, we have none other than the owner, the representative, and the leader of Epic Events in Toronto, has worked with the likes of yours truly on Tsunami, with Private Ryan on Soca Brainwash, their own epic events, and a plethora of high-level events. Mm-hmm. Want to welcome to the Up From Here podcast none other than our good friend, Darryl.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Hopefully, I'm not a hardcover book.
Yeah, we're gonna bend it, make it flexible today.
Yeah.
Now, Darryl, we appreciate you first and foremost for being here. Thank you. To get things started, you know. I have probably the craziest story, one of the craziest stories that I've ever shared on this podcast about how I met Darryl.
Right.
But before we get into that, you know, I mentioned a lot of big events, a lot of big names. How did you even get started in the event planning business?
Good question. I get that a lot. And to be really short and simple, it was planning my own. I came up with a concept to get my friends and my family together, and to do an event that really elevates our culture and to gather us together in a community. And we labeled it Friends and Family Out Back, and that took off on a line and a brand line on its own, and that was really the start of Epic Events in 2013.
Yeah, amazing. And it's crazy because, yeah, as you say, 2013. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, that was around the growth of outdoor, outback, inclusive events. And that was really like the era where those things started to pop up all over the place.
Yeah.
So you were one of the first that market. And I remember before I even knew you, which was all of 2 years ago, a year or two ago?
Around that, yeah.
Before I knew you, I was hearing rumblings of the event.
Yeah,
and a lot of because this was a particular event because it's not advertised publicly.
Yeah.
It's only literally to family and friends.
Right.
So I would hear about this event, but I'm thinking to myself, well, what is FFOB?
Yeah.
I haven't seen a flyer about it. What are you guys talking about? And everybody would say, no. This is one of the best events.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there kicking myself like, I gotta get in this. Like, what's going on?
Even our own barber Jeff was like saying that he went there and mashed up his Jordans and stuff. But he had a good time. He to this day he talks about that his first FFOB party,
which is a testament to your hard work. You know what I mean? And it was a blessing to hear, you know, even further how that event came about, and just the fact that your family and friends did come together and make it such a success. I was fortunate enough to be booked on the very last edition of FFOB, at least that particular brand, and it was such an amazing time. My Jordans too.
Yeah.
Got messed up because the inevitable rain just happened to fall.
Right.
So it's amazing. I really enjoyed, you know, not only playing on that event, but just being in the atmosphere, and it really did feel like an at-home experience.
Yeah, and that's what we always try to deliver, and we came up with the hashtag where friends become family.
Yeah.
Because as the event grew, and as you said, you know, you hear about it, and we always got calls about it saying, you know, how can we get how can we get involved? How can we attend? And by that time, it was normally subscribed to a year in advance. So
Wow.
the event was an amazing experience. Not only for us putting it together and executing it, but the feedback we got from it. And you're right, 10 years, the 10-year anniversary you played, BuzzB was on the stage, and that was the evolution of the event.
Amazing. So we're looking forward to, many more contributions to the event space, because you clearly have developed a formula that is something people love. To switch gears a little bit, now, when it comes to events and event planning, as I mentioned at the start of the show, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way. Now, you overseeing, I guess, not only the Toronto market, but the soca industry as a whole and the Fet industry, what are some of the wrong things that you've seen and some of the things that you would encourage people to stay away from in terms of bad practices?
Another good question. I think first and foremost, it's not to be critical of you live and you learn and you build on your experiences,
Right.
and we have. I think simplicity is the name of the game. I think I believe that not to overcomplicate the delivery, the planning, at the same time making sure and doing your research, right? Toronto is a very, very different market, especially for the Caribbean community and the Caribbean event experience. There are lots of rules, lots of regulations, lots of standards to be met. And that's where, as a Caribbean culture and as a Caribbean event culture, we may want to look for loopholes and easier ways to do it. If it's any advice I would give, and something that we've stood by for many, many years, is do it once because you're doing it properly, right? So you never have to revisit, and always consider the impact of your actions on the overall experience of the event.
Right.
Excellent. So even in terms of the bad practices, right? Now, as you said, it's not to criticize, because sometimes if one doesn't know what to fix, they don't know what to fix. So doing an event, one thing I noticed with you, especially in terms of your help with Tsunami, was your level of knowledge of the behind the scenes aspect. Things like the permits that need to get filed, the who you need to talk to get this done, the fire routes in a party. There was things that I wasn't knowledgeable about at all, that you came in and taught. Maybe share some of those things in terms of mainly Toronto, but I know you have experience in places like Miami and Trinidad. Just a general scope of the important things that the average person throwing an event might not think about.
When planning events, larger events especially, you always have to consider, and again, this is invisible to your patrons. You want these things to be invisible to your patrons. You have to consider every possible risk, right? And that is not just risk to the event goer, but risk to your staff, risk to the community you're having the event in, risk to your brand, risk to the image. And I think one of the pitfalls is, as I mentioned, looking for ways to not do certain things that you may say it's not that important, but then you realize how important it is. And a perfect example of that is sanitation, right? I always tell people, I say, it sounds like it's garbage, but it's very important, right? And if we don't do the proper work to get that taken care of at a large event, you run into so many issues. And in the long run, all these little things that we don't do turn into bigger issues when you try to renew your event or go back to that location.
Right.
And it also takes our industry down. It takes the image and perception of our industry down.
Something as simple as leaving the place how you found it.
Spotless. And that's something we've done. And we've promoted that on our media. You will never know we were there. And we've had people look at, Soca Brainwash, for instance, at Fort York, from the apartment buildings up top, and they looked the day after, and they've messaged people we know and said, "Where did it all go?" Right? It's like nothing was ever there. I mean, you strive for perfection, but at the same time, it's really just an awareness of making sure you leave it how you found it.
Right. Now, you've had your own experiences, as we've mentioned, doing events. When it comes to assisting events and maybe even partnering on specific events to make them happen, somebody very notable that you did work with is, like mentioned earlier, Private Ryan. And that's not just anybody to be working with, right? especially in terms of our industry, that's arguably the top guy. So for you to even catch his attention enough to end up working side by side with him to bring his largest brand to our city, Toronto, that's something we can't just gloss over. How did you even make that point of contact, and how was that working relationship working with Private Ryan?
Soca Brainwash, as renowned as it is, and all the other brands that Ryan has, and plethora of his brand identity. At the end of the day, Ryan's a businessman. Yeah. Ryan has a vision for his brand. He has a vision for the impact of his brand, and he does not sacrifice on the vision. Yeah. And that's something I think that aligned with both of us. I don't sacrifice on the vision and the impact that I want Epic to make. I'm sure Ryan did his research. He spoke to his people. And coming into a new territory is a big decision. Coming into a new territory is not only a big decision because it's bringing your brand into somewhere you want it to be successful, but you do not know the operating guidelines and the standards and stuff of that territory. So he had to trust someone who would know. And if we didn't have the answer, we would get the answer. So I think it was just integrity based. We did what we said we were going to do. And Ryan respects that. And our working relationship you asked about is a good working relationship. It's professional. It's respectful, in terms of the brand. As for a quick tidbit, I know people were asking, we're not going to see Soca Brainwash in 2024 in Toronto. We're going to see a couple other brands that Ryan is going to be delivering, and that's just managing how the market is. And it's not that Soca Brainwash won't return to Toronto. When Ryan deems that something that he wants to do, the brand will return. But we have a great working relationship.
Nice.
And we make sure that we do what we say we're going to do.
Nice. Which is very key.
Nice. Talking about team, the importance of having a great team. That's one thing I know about Epic events is that there's always people working behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, all over. Talk to us about the importance of having a great team.
Super important. I believe in a concept called leaders creating leaders. Right? I don't want to work with a bunch of people that are only dependent on me telling them what to do. I want people that are innovative, people that are creative, people that will take the initiative and make suggestions and look for ways to make things better, and give me the opportunity to create that space for them to make to do a good job. And I think our team is built on the premise of strong personalities, strong skills, and a willingness to represent the brand that they love. Right. Yes. And they carry that vision to where we believe the better we make our industry and the collaborators in our industry, like Tsunami and BuzzB Inc., the better we are. Right. So our team consists of those personalities and that desire to always do the best job.
Amazing. Now, when we're talking about the job that gets done in the team, this one's a bit of we're straying a little off of the positive reinforcement of the best ways and best practices of doing an event. When I bring up the topic of your team throwing an event, you guys doing an event, and drinking. Now, that's something that I've never even really thought of. I'm figuring this is a fete. Our team worked hard for a lot of months. Yeah. We go do the fete that night. You see a crowd packed with people. Jakety, you know what to do. Right. 2 bottles, let's go. Right. And we get the bottles and enjoy ourselves. We don't even think.
Right.
But when Darryl came into the picture, he said with where his team is concerned, there's not to be any alcohol consumed. Right. And then there's maybe small parameters where, we could take a drink, maybe if it's closer to the end of the night. Right. But you're very serious about that aspect of it. Now, in our culture where drinking is such a, I don't know if praise is the word, but such a glorified thing, what, in your opinion, is, I guess, the barrier to drinking while you're working and doing these events?
I'll tell you, that's tough. It's very tough. One, because you just said it culturally. Yeah. We drinking whole day. Yeah. Right? and as a business, one of the things you want to always maintain is a professional image, and not just because you want people to see you in that professional space, but you want everything you do to reflect the standards that your brand projects. And we're all human, and the people on my team all want to have a great time. You work really hard to see this event get to execution. And once it executes, you think, yeah, I want to have a couple drinks. I'm not going to say in any event, you shall not consume alcohol, right? Yeah. What I will say and what I do say is be responsible. Always remember you have a job to do, and always remember people are watching you. Yeah. Once you have the brand on your chest or on your back or wherever it is, you represent the brand. You represent the company, you represent the vision, you represent the impact that that's going to make. And it's very key that a team that believes in that will support that. Let me tell you, after, have a blast, right? Have a blast, celebrate your work, celebrate your effort, celebrate your successes. But up till that point, and I make it a point at my events, people look at me and they go, well, why don't you have a drink? I'm not saying I'm never going to have a drink, but I'm there making sure that my patrons or my clients have the best experience because I'm aware of what's going on.
Amazing. Now I think it's time for the story of how I even met Darryl.
Oh God, is this embarrassing?
No. It's actually literally, this is one of the craziest stories I've ever told on this podcast. And it still blows my mind till this day how crazy it is. Now, before we even get into the juicy part of the story, it trails back to the first time I got booked for Soca Brainwash, right? Private Ryan announced that he was doing Soca Brainwash. This is post-COVID.
Right.
And he'll be doing it for the first time after COVID. Like his first Soca Brainwash experience will be Toronto.
Right.
Now, he put up a picture, I believe, of the DJs before COVID. Mm-hmm. And in the caption, it had said, which DJs would you like to see on this Toronto edition of Soca Brainwash? Mm-hmm. Now, the comment section was flooded with my name, but there's a reason for that. Now, JKD, what was your part to play in that?
Well, I just told everybody to put Buzz's name. Simple.
And people look back like Buzz was sending out that message and campaigning for himself.
Yeah, but nobody knew. I didn't even tell you.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you did.
Right.
So you came to me, or I think we sent the picture to each other at the same time.
Yeah.
And you, being the friend that you are, said, okay, Buzz, I think you should campaign for this.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, I'm not that type of guy. Like, I'm not going to go and put my name out there and message a bunch of people. Just so happens, that weekend, it was also Duran's birthday.
Right. Yeah.
So Duran said, nah, forget that. What I'm going to do, I'll message people and I'll tell them, yo, it's my birthday. And one thing that I would love to see is my brother Buzz on the Soca Brainwash stage. Yeah. So he messaged as many people as he could. Next thing you know, the comment section was filled with like genuine comments. Yeah. Buzz is this. Buzz works like this. You should work with Buzz.
Right.
This was maybe 2 weeks before Brainwash. Up until 2 days before Brainwash, I hadn't heard anything. So again, I was disappointed and I looked at Gerard and you see, this is why I didn't do it.
Right.
That morning, wiping coal out of my eye, I looked out of my phone and I see DJ Private Ryan sent you a DM.
Right.
Yo, bro, would you like to be on? I said, are you kidding me? It worked. Yep. So this is now my first Private Ryan booking, my first Brainwash booking, and I'm ecstatic. So the story now, we get to Fort York grounds. And as we enter the grounds, I'm there. I'm the first DJ that has to play. And we're there before everybody else, except obviously the working team. We get inside. As we get inside, I'm asking around because it's a very strict operation. You need wristbands to get into certain areas. Right. So I'm asking for the wristband to get into the backstage. Right. So a few security guards told me, that's the guy you need to talk to. And they're pointing at Darryl. So it's myself, my sister Natasha, and Skippy. Right. All three of us went up to Darryl to get the wristbands. So we get to him. We say, hey, Darryl, I'm DJ BuzzB. I'm just looking for wristbands for backstage. He said, no problem. He started giving us the rundown and talking to us for a few minutes. Right. And the whole time, my sister's looking at this guy like, something about this guy is so familiar to her. Yeah. And as she's looking, she's like, she has to just say it. What about this guy is so familiar? So when he was finished talking, she's like, I don't know what it is or where to put my finger on it, but something about you, like, you look very familiar to me. You know what he turns back to her and says?
What?
Well, I should look familiar. you babysat my kids.
Wow. Crazy.
My sister is 40. So this was way back.
Right.
And the fact that like came back full circle to make it a step crazier, Skippy's looking at him. No, I think you look familiar too. He trailed back to a time where they had an interaction and met each other.
Right.
I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah.
Skippy came to a couple of the FFOBs.
Yeah. There you go.
FFOBs,
so he already was intertwined, and he, I think, picked up tickets and whatnot, right?
He came and picked up invitations and stuff.
Even crazier now. I'm going backstage, put my stuff to leave backstage now to go back in the crowd.
Yeah.
I'm leaving and I'm walking out, and I see this lady lugging a big suitcase.
Right.
So me being me, I look at her and I'm like, what up? You just got off the flight or something? Just making a joke. I don't know who this lady is. She just looks at me. She's like, I have to talk to you later. I was just joking. I'm sorry. I didn't know I was offending anybody by that. So I left it alone. Later on comes now. She calls me after I finish playing.
Yeah.
As she calls me, she brings me back into the tent in backstage in Soca Brainwash. Yeah. I say, what is going on? When she sits down, she's like, I cannot believe how big you've gotten. Like, I knew you when you were this, and like just to see like you're a grown man now and you're DJing and doing events, that's crazy. Yeah. She's like, yeah, I'm Darryl's wife.
Wow.
And I haven't seen you since back in the day in church. And she was the one that paid me for Soca Brainwash in terms of the payouts for all the DJs. Right. The fact that came around full circle in the first Soca Brainwash booking was crazy as it is. Yeah. Come to find out, Darryl was really pivotal in making that operation of Soca Brainwash happen in Toronto because of his knowledge in the behind the scenes. Okay. So naturally, hey buddy, so we have this event Tsunami. Right. It's going crazy, but I need to steer the ship a lot better than this. Yeah. Is there any way you could help us out? Yeah. He gave us a couple meetings because this is a guy where he's not just gonna take bookings or what. He's not gonna just work with anybody. Right. He has to know you're about what you're talking about, and as you said earlier, it has to be cohesive. Right. Each party has to be about their word and all of these fundamental foundation items. So fast forward, he had a couple meetings with us. Next thing you know, he came by the house. We found out our parents went to their wedding. Wow. Our parents still have their wedding CD upstairs. So just the way all of that came back full circle. Yeah. And this guest we have here today, Darryl, was very instrumental in Tsunami 2023 being such a huge success. Right. Yeah. Now, we had the people and the demand, but structuring it where it felt like this is legit and this is a festival, a lot of that is attributed to our guest here, Darryl. So before we even continue the conversation, on behalf of myself and all 5,000 people that were in Tsunami, thank you. We thank you
for sure. Thanks for that. And I mean, I think my role, thank you for the accolades, but I think my role was only successful because you guys pulled your weight. Right. You guys did what you were going to do, right? Yeah. And I think your guests obviously experienced that. I just wanted to quickly, though, touch on your comment about JKD sending your name in. I didn't know. I think you may have mentioned that to me. But that in itself is a very key element of your team rooting for you. It's collaboration and collaboration within a team. Yeah. As an industry and as a culture, if we have that collaborative mindset and that desire to see our culture build, and we promote here in Toronto in that way, man, Toronto will be a formidable place when it comes to Caribbean events, right? And I think that you're doing a lot of work in that space, but that's key. That whole rooting for you, selflessly rooting. Exactly. I want to see BuzzB on that stage, right? I know JKD, he spins too. He could have been, I want to see myself on that stage. Exactly. I want to see BuzzB. So that's what our community needs to do. We need to selflessly elevate.
We need a lot more of that.
I like that. I really like that.
And that's very appreciated. And he knows I do the same anytime for him.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's just how I operate within our team.
You see, sometimes that's one of the hardest things to do, to extend yourself to somebody else's success, because you want to be successful yourself. Yeah. But there's the concept. You help enough people get what they want, you automatically get what you want, because you'll never forget that. Right?
Exactly.
So and that's what you adopt in especially in this industry. Yeah. Coming together to elevate the culture, the Caribbean culture, the event culture, as a collaborative team, rather than as everybody trying to do their own thing differently. Let's do it together.
Why do you think that's not a thing in in Toronto though, like especially in the scene?
Great question, Darryl.
That's a really great question. You know, as I said earlier, Toronto is one of those, in my opinion, in my experience, I'm sure everybody has different opinions and different experiences. In my experience, Toronto is one of those territories that it could be very unforgiving. It's a very, I don't want to use the word sensitive, but it's a very aware community and aware culture. You know, in some ways we do a good job of doing a bad job, and that hurts us, right? So I think, to answer your question properly, it's an unwillingness to say, you know what, let's figure this out together, because everybody wants to make their own mark, right? They want their brand to make that mark, but coming and figuring it out together and identifying the pitfalls, things that hold us back, developing ways to work with that, and impressing the Toronto community will always have a home, right? You'll always have the community promoting your culture, right? And I think that's where there's a big opportunity for us as a Caribbean culture to work in elevating our culture to the extent where Toronto as a whole says, you know, I want to bring my kids from Sudbury to the Caribbean, to Caribana, for them to see how amazing this is because of how well executed this culture brings this festival to Toronto.
Amazing. And in line with Dron's conversation, kind of on the flip side, one thing that's frequently talked about in our community is ego and the inability to work with each other because of said ego or any factors similar to that. What would you say some advice is on putting ego aside in order for a bigger picture, like what you're describing there? How do we do that? How do we as a Caribbean people put our pride and ego aside to work together? Because there's times where I say to myself, boy, if whoever and myself actually got along, the things we could do. And sometimes it's just like, but do I want that headache? Because I know how I would get if I did work with them. And is that worth what the bigger picture is in terms of it happening as a collective? Versus, I know me. If I want something done, I'm going to get it done. There's nothing that could really stop me besides a couple things. I will get it done. So either way, I'm doing it. But in that respect, is there any advice you can give on putting aside pride and ego to get the job done as a collaborative effort?
I think the only word that comes to my mind is vision, common goal, right? And I think once two or more people have a common vision and a common goal, it's easier then to work out the kinks in each other's personalities or with each other's egos or your pride, because you're still agreeing that you want to achieve that goal. It's just now how we achieve that goal. So I think it's vision. It's having a shared vision and having, as you say, you know, if you thought of, if only we could pull minds together, we'd be formidable. Right. So it's pulling those minds in a shared vision, and I don't know, whatever the shared vision is.
And I think a big part about that too is a mutual respect. Right?
Absolutely.
There's a vision, but there's also how you talk to people. There's always how you deal with people. And if there can be a mutual respect there, even if you guys don't necessarily get along, things could work. And I feel like it will get done, and it's unfortunately a lot of individuals trying to do it. And it would be nice to see a collaborative effort, but how realistic is that? I don't know.
I mean, we're human. I can tell you. I mean, I'm human. There are people in this industry that I absolutely don't like. Right? And that's me just being real. I don't like them. But it doesn't mean that I won't work with them if our goal is to do something that is good, that works for our community, for our culture, for a bigger cause, to create standards or create guidelines for how things are done. You're never going to meet everybody that likes you or everybody that you like, right? So, it's just managing personalities and managing people.
Now, somebody we kind of like is Darryl. So, JKD, in terms of your experience and seeing what he did for Tsunami, what is your overview of his part?
Well, like you said, I don't like him. But,
but kind of. Only on Monday.
Just kidding. No, it definitely opened my eyes in terms of how he handled his team, per se, and us. Mainly because there was a lot of, I guess, things that we didn't know. And he was more like that hand that reached out and said, listen, this is what you're supposed to do. And he didn't really, I guess, like he wasn't babying us.
Right.
He was showing us what to do, and then he let us do it, which is what I liked. What I liked about it, because it showed us that we could do it, and we have to learn how to do it so we are prepared for the next time. Gotcha. That's the one thing I took from Tsunami last year, and just his overall character, like greatest guy. You know, he wasn't. I haven't seen him. He wasn't angry. I didn't see him angry. At least I didn't see him angry. But, but he always had a smile on his face. You never knew that. He wasn't that type of guy to be like to show off like he's running the show or anything. He was just that humble guy.
The humble guy in the flower shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, I was now going to bring up the shirt. So you remember the shirt? No, and that's not. It wasn't me trying to show that I was humble or whatever it was. Is I think we spoke about this. The beauty of any situation when you're managing is an event is the ability to appear invisible. To the experience. Right. I'm not the experience. In some fashion, your team's not the experience. The experience is what people are there for. Right. Your team is performing such a vital role, but they're doing it in silence. I always tell my team, I said, regardless of what's happening at an event and how many dynamics are happening or how many bad things are happening, we are like a swan. We're nice and cruising on top, but underneath our feet are kicking away. And that's the beauty of it. And back to what I said earlier, leaders creating leaders. I'm not there to take on additional jobs. I'm there if you ask me something and I could show you how to do it, run with it.
Right.
Awesome. And I would say, as I said earlier, this guy literally came in like the textbook. For Fetes, and not just any Fetes. So even if you wanted to reach out to Epic Events to assist with your event, this is not the rum shop bar Fetes kind of experience that as a client of his per se. Maybe you might, and depending on who it is, but generally speaking, it's for festival events, which require a lot more than the average person might think. Now, when it comes to structuring my team, which I already had structured, but it was based off of a few principles that weren't even really based on how you could complete the task. It was more so based on the person that you are, right? And that's what I structured my team with. Fast forward to when Darryl came into the picture, he actually gave roles and leadership positions that I could place these guys in now where they have actual responsibilities and duties that need to be adhered to for a successful event to happen. And these are roles that like we kind of did, but it was never formal. And it was never structured either. It was kind of like, we know all these things need to get done. All right, let's get it done. You got that? Okay, you got it? Cool. But now this was like a structured way of actually doing this festival event. And two things that were big with me with that. One was being the leader of that event. And this is important for anybody throwing events. Being the leader, it was important when he gave me the vision of, no, buddy, your team is who needs to be front row and doing the work. And if it's not them particularly, they need to have a team. But your employees should be who's operating for you. So that on the day of, the point of what you should be doing is mingling, networking, interacting with your crowd. And before last year, which was 2023, I was running ahead with like a chicken with his head cut off. I was running around all over the place. But last year was the first year I got any sense of like peace. I was able to go in the crowd. I have a whole 20-minute thing of me interviewing people. And it gave me an opportunity to now talk to people and be there to touch and interact with the crowd. And that's something that was foreign to me before. But he specified it when he talked about Brainwash. He was saying, Ryan, do you ever see him running around and doing this ABCD? No. He literally will show up 3 hours probably after the event started. And he's cruising. His team's got everything under control.
And we seen him firsthand in London. Remember when he came up and started high-fiving with us and saying, what's up? Like
exactly.
He was talking with people. He was mingling, like,
In Soca started in London. And I took notes from that. Because before I was so particular about being hands-on. And if something didn't get done, I was the one quickly. But he's like, no, organize it properly. Your team is supposed to handle it. If they don't, you organize a backup for that.
Yeah.
And that's something that, was very foreign to me. But you could, anything I didn't share on where that's concerned, maybe if you want to shed some light on that.
No, I think the only thing I'd touch on, and again, thank you. I feel like such a special guest here today. But that, realistically, I am, what you see in terms of what I represent is the powerhouse of the team behind me, or in a lot of ways, the team ahead of me, right? I think the only thing I'll touch on with regards to your team and pulling your team together and giving specific roles and opportunities, you want to make sure that you give your team members and your leads the room, especially for large events with large responsibilities, the room to operate in authentically, that they can be themselves, that they're not, you're figuring out with them their strengths and where they can operate well, and giving them the opportunity and every opportunity to grow in that role. Versus throwing them into something that you think they may do well in, but they may not be suited for, then you're doing yourself a disservice. And the same thing back and forth. If they believe they can do something, but you believe that their skill set is better suited, that's a difficult conversation, but it's a conversation that you have because you have your team's success in mind. Right. So back to what you're saying, that creates the room for you now and the confidence for you to have, that these areas are being taken care of. So your mind is now focused on your brand, on meeting your guests, on elevating your brand, like you did last year.
Yeah. And there were definitely moments that were rewarding that were a result of me having that ability to network. I got bookings in places in the world this year that I didn't have before.
You're welcome.
Because I was able to talk to them in Tsunami. I got to take pictures, the quote unquote kiss babies. Like I got to do those things.
But isn't that amazing? Because I was with you in Trinidad on that. Actually, I wasn't. It was another time where. No, I was with you in Trinidad where somebody recognized you too from up here in Toronto. And then you posted something where people were recognizing you because you now gave yourself the opportunity. Everybody sees your face on your flyers, but you gave yourself the opportunity to connect with people. Right. And they'll never forget that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, another thing about being an individual that has a big brand, one thing that I took note of in terms of what you do and what you said was that you don't wear anything if it doesn't have your personal logo on it. I think that's what you said. Something to that effect.
Yeah, something to that. And
talk about that and the importance of that.
I mean, that's, to some extent, it's common sense in the industry. You want to promote your brand unless you're collaborating with somebody else. But when we are at our events, I'm not wearing any other. You won't see me walking around in a brand that doesn't either represent our image and or my brand. And you look at anybody who is very successful in the industry when it comes to the power of their brand. I mean, you talk about Private Ryan, and I always say to people when they ask, well, what is it like work with Ryan? I mean, I'm not the only person that's worked with Ryan. Ryan's a businessman, and he's very, very smart and strategic about what he does. You never see Ryan pushing anybody else's brand at his events, right? And he's very specific about the placement of his brand. It's not just what you wear, it's what your team wears. It's what is branded at your event because you are your brand, right? So I think we've had conversations about this. Sometimes the simplest place. I remember our first official FFOB where we went really big with it. Man, we had the FFOB logo inside the face basin that people were washing their hands with on the mirrors. It was a little overbearing, but it never left you. You were seeing it wherever it was, and that's something that you try to create and try to leave with people because it's something they'll never forget.
That's one thing I praise you on too, like your attention to small details, like obviously, like the music is going to be great, the drinks are going to be flowing, but there's also like little things that you focus on to actually enhance patrons' experience. For example, I remember at Brainwash, you have people outside just making sure they're happy that they're actually excited to come into an event. And that's one thing I praise you on, like, the little small details. Yeah,
like pumping up the event. I mean, your brand, Tsunami, is one of the reasons I wanted to work with you because I saw the potential, I saw the impact that you were creating, and then I saw it in reality when 5,000 people came down, and it's only because you could have only fit 5,000 people there that you didn't have more. That you look at large festivals like Ultra Music Festival and stuff, and it's the build up to the experience. I always say your patron experience starts the minute they buy that ticket. Right? It starts with, the social media and stuff that you put up, but the minute they buy that ticket, they have now engaged into your experience. So everything from there, from the ticket they have, whether it's virtual or whether it's something they're getting in swag, or the minute they step out of that Uber and the first thing they hear, the first thing they smell, the first thing they see sets the tone for them. Right. And you can see it at Brainwash and at my other events at FFOB, the greeting and the pump is very important because they're coming in there ready. Right.
Nice.
Now, one thing another thing you've told me as we've, developed a business relationship to explode these things like Tsunami and take them to a whole nother level. Another one of the things that you've said to me that stuck out a lot was you can't own and operate a festival event with a basement party mentality.
You remember that.
And it's till this day, it's something that's like one of those big things that stuck out from the words you've shared with us. And to repeat that again, because it's very important for the listeners to hear, especially ones in event planning. You can't throw a festival-sized event with a basement party mentality. Expound on that a little bit.
Well, I think I told you who told me that, and I won't get into that. That was a defining moment in Epic's journey.
Right.
Not that we were doing basement parties, but I wanted to expand the brand. And a lot of the work we do is obviously is also outside of the Caribbean community, but my passion is obviously in my culture. And to really explain very simply that concept is one, the widening of your mindset. Right, we talked about being able to adapt to the territories that you're working in, to adapt to the culture of the territory, but also the standards, the guidelines, the laws, the rules, the expectations. That's a lot of work, right? And you have to commit to getting that done, because with any event, any festival event, any brand that you're really taking seriously, it's a long game. Anybody could throw an event in its inception and people get excited and they go once. What happens 2, 3, 4 events down the road if you don't do it right? So that's why I always say it. I push that with my team. I even tell it to myself, think big, right? Think longevity, think long-term impact. What are the things we have to do to make sure that we have that long-term impact, and that nobody's coming to kick us out of our own festival? And I say that because there's many events that, something very crucial, whether it be a license, some sort of insurance, some sort of standard, some sort of permit that wasn't done, and it shuts the event down, or somebody gets fined, right? You got to think big, you got to think comprehensive, and you have to act like a festival owner in every way, shape, and form.
Beautiful. And these are important things to note, because as I said, until Darryl came into the picture, just to be transparent, I was getting to a festival level and still operating it like we were down in Scarborough doing a little rum shop booking, like I said. And we felt what that did. Right? Like, it did not translate when it came. You guys had a great time partying, but you guys, a lot of the times, will have no clue what goes on behind the scenes. And before we took it as serious as we did, which there were still problems that still need to be fixed where that's concerned, it was a lot more, I'll say, an organized mess. And until we sharpen that sword, I could see the vision where it'll be organized to the point where it's a well-oiled machine. But before that, I was operating, and it's crazy to say it out loud, but literally off the top of my head. Everything Tsunami related was up here. And all I was thinking, whatever I was thinking about, I would rely on memory. And not only am I getting older in age, but when I was younger, I could remember whatever, I'm good. But now it's no, things are actually changing with me, and I'm feeling that happen. So as much as, yes, Tsunami's blowing up, just me as a person too is changing. And, I say all that to say this is not an easy thing to do at all. And one important thing what you have to consider is work-life balance. Now, shed some light, Darryl, on the importance of balancing the two especially knowing that, yes, this is a festival event. It's of importance and it requires a lot of attention. But what are some tips in terms of balancing the work and like, especially family or life balance?
Well, a quick story. I remember a specific event that myself and my team worked on for 3 days straight to try to get that event. We were brought in at the last minute to try to get that event up and running. And I worked myself to the bone so hard that on the way home, I could have sworn the vehicle was going reverse. I wasn't driving, but I was sitting in the passenger seat. I was so tired that my feet felt like sponge. I didn't know if the car was going forward or backward. I felt like I felt horrible, and I said, why am I doing this? Because I'm no good to myself. I'm no good to the people I care about. I'm no good to my team. What example am I setting? Right? And then your fuse burns out really quickly. You get frustrated. You get angry. You go, I'll never do this again. And we've all been there, right? So it's that realization where you have to define why. First of all, why are you doing this? And that's something that I found myself over the years, even most recently going to Trinidad and redefining why Epic is doing what it's doing in this space was important, because I had to figure out, well, what is important, and then work around that. Work-life balance, everybody talks about it. Everybody talks about wellness. Everybody talks about making sure you take care of yourself, and those are all really good things to say. But sometimes it's the hardest thing to do in this industry,
absolutely.
right? Because sometimes you're wearing many shirts. You are trying to do so many things. And in your situation, you're also one of the key artists, right? So you have to do. It's also about one of the keys is having that team behind you, making sure that everybody is, one, invested, two, is doing their part, and three, you're not afraid to put your hand up when you're juggling more than you can and say, I need someone to take this off my plate, right? Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to do a good job with these other things. It's a combination of difficult conversations to make sure that your priority is the health of your team and the health of your health. And really and truly, you can't tell your team that they need to develop work-life balance if they see you running around like a chicken with your head cut off, right? Because you can't do that. You're not setting the right example. Not taking on more than you could chew, right? And being able, knowing when to shelf something, when to say great concept. We'll have to do that next iteration, next year, because we have too much going on. And you'll find, and you see it now, you have so many people coming after you to say, hey, can you do this? You want to play here? You want to do this? That's great. But, you always have to ask yourself, is it something that's going to also maintain my health, your brand, and the health of your brand? Because you don't want to run really, really hard and all of a sudden you can't do it and you disappear for a year. Right?
And we've seen it happen.
Exactly. You see it happen, and it's heartbreaking sometimes when you see, because not a lot of patrons understand how much hard work goes into by yourself, the lead act, for instance, and how much and you are the visionary for your brand, and you have all these things going on, the commitment and the back and the forth and the financial responsibilities. All those play a big part in our overall balance and our ability to balance ourselves in this industry.
Nice.
Amazing. Now, in terms of, you starting in this event planning industry, before that, correct me if I'm wrong, you started off as a DJ when it comes to entertainment, no?
Oh my God.
Did you for real?
I did. Man,
you would have never known that.
You know what? For years when I was living in Toronto too, I would DJ. I DJ at weddings. I DJ at a couple clubs.
Oh, wow.
And that wasn't because my mind was I'm going to be the biggest DJ. It was because I have a love for music. I've always had a love for music. I have a love for people. I have a love for community. I have a love for making people have a great time. My vision was always be able to stand up and see thousands and thousands of people, all different colors, creeds, races, religions, beliefs, all having a great time together.
Nice.
And I did that for a while, so I could handle the ones and twos.
Now, when it comes to the culture, right, and soca music in general, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember you telling me you never even really took to soca at a certain point in time. You're never really into it. So for you now to be helping pioneer two of the biggest festivals in the world for soca music, that's crazy. That's a full circle moment again. Talk about that transition from you not really being as invested into soca per se, and what made you now be very passionate about this genre and this, I guess, subgenre of Fetes?
Well, first of all, my ability to work with and to help develop brands like Private Ryan, Soca Brainwash, and Tsunami is only because I've been entrusted by people like yourself. So,
Right.
I don't consider myself a pioneer.
Right.
Humbly speaking, I consider myself having the opportunity to help you build something that I think is amazing. Because if I didn't think it was amazing, I wouldn't touch it.
Yeah. It was rock and roll at first, no, right?
Yeah, so your boy had shoulder length hair, and I was into my alternative rock, and really didn't. I mean, growing up in Trinidad, soca was, you grew up with soca, but it wasn't my thing. Migrating to North America still wasn't my thing. It took really a tough moment in my life, and in commemoration of that moment, to really embrace soca. But it was like I caught a bug then. It wasn't even an effort to. It was like, oh my God, where has this been all my life?
Right.
And then I quickly attached myself to the vision and the goal of soca, which was unity and community and that it was just sorry, it was just the way was paved after that.
Nice.
Only up from there.
It was only literally up from there. Even today, I may be out and about in a 3-piece suit or dressed to the nines and driving, and it's I'm playing soca and I'm proud of it.
Right.
Because of its reach, because of it shows that we can overcome so much as a culture, and an expression and all the different collaborations and fusions. I mean, where else are you going to find that?
Yeah.
Where else are you going to find that?
Now, for a lot of people that, are oblivious to what actually goes on behind the scenes and come out to Tsunami, remember, as we said earlier, there was 5,000 people there. And the only reason that was the case is because we had to shut the doors on the rest. Only 5,000 people could fit on the property we got. And the rest of the people, there was over 1,000 begging for tickets. So that alone should show you the value and hype over the brand, that there's a reason for that. And it's not just because it's a wet fet. There's a million wet fets around the world. But to me, it's the passion that myself and the team bring behind that brand of giving you guys the best experience that you could possibly have, instead of just putting up speakers and whatever the case is. We're doing a lot more than you would get at arguably a party that you go to where you don't get anything, but you're still paying more than what you're complaining that we're charging. And to me, that's the craziest part. But for the people that, have come to Tsunami and don't really have a full knowledge or appreciation of what goes on behind the scenes, from the coach's perspective, how was your opinion of how we worked? Because we're giving a lot of feedback on what you did for us in terms of the growth of the brand and understanding the business side. How do you find that we operated as a team from your lens?
Well, you see, I had the benefit of taking the time to understand what your challenges were prior.
Yeah.
Right. And I also had the benefit of you being open to adjusting and working with certain concepts to make it better. If I could look at it from two perspectives: one, if I were to stand in the patron's shoes, I was reading comments that were, like this is, what do they call it? It not the word festival, but they called it, it was something about a wet festival, or and it was a very complimentary term. When they came in and they saw that what you had put out as a concept, they were walking into it, and that is so important, right? They were seeing what you envisioned.
Oh, you're talking about the cartoon kind of video.
Yeah, you did a rendering, right?
Yes.
And when they walked in, everything in that rendering was there.
Right.
But you did that rendering before, right? And I think that's important from the patron's perspective. From my perspective, I think it comes with an understanding of my role. And there, I think you guys, there's always opportunity to grow, even for me, because I'm learning every single day. I learn something new, especially in this industry, especially because of how everything changes, culture, music, events. I think your team did exceptionally well, considering you had a massive jump in numbers from the year before.
Absolutely.
Right? And
go ahead.
And you also delivered an even more elevated experience to your guests from the year before. Because not only did you, your goal was to fix certain things that you thought didn't work well, but you also wanted to deliver what you really thought your vision would be. And you nailed it. And you nailed it so much so that I think after it, I told you, I said, I don't say this to many people, but you created a monster, right? Because you know the impact. Again, the goal is impact, because anybody could throw a party. Anybody could throw a fete. The impact of your event was people were asking about buying tickets when they were leaving your event, asking about buying tickets for 2024. How amazing is that, right? So
stopping me in Trinidad.
Yeah, and when are your tickets dropping? And and that is impact. That's the impact of your brand. So I think your team did very, very well. I think also there's a lot to be said for your suppliers and your collaborators, right? Yes. I think it's carefully selecting and building relationships with the people that supply and build the infrastructure for your event is also going to reflect in the execution of your event.
Absolutely,
right? And you guys take the time, and I remember recommending that certain things be done with certain suppliers, so you build those relationships, so they're not just coming and dropping equipment. Right. They are participating in the experience, right? And they feel like they're participating in it. So, as I said at the end of Tsunami last year, I said, "Job well done." Like you will always come better, you will always come harder, you will always bring out, something that elevates you from the experience before. But the real essence and vision of your event was delivered. Right, and nobody could say anything different. Right. Yeah. Man, I saw people having fun like I have never seen. I mean, we've all partied in Trinidad. Yeah. We've all gone to wet fetes in Trinidad, and it was that vibe. People couldn't care what they were wearing. Nobody was checking their makeup. Right? They were just having a blast. Yep. Right. So kudos to your team.
Nice.
And that's what we curate this as. We want it to be the time of your life. And as much as we could do to make that happen is as much as we will do.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see how it came full circle. There was people, because, sometimes I don't always see it, but sometimes I see the naysayers. But I wasn't seeing any of that after we did the event. And even some of the naysayers came to me. There was one guy I remember in particular. He came to me outside of a party I had to DJ in Brampton. He's like, "Yo, are you BuzzB?" I'm like, yeah, it's some Scarborough guy.
Sounds like a Toronto man.
Toronto man. So he's like, "You BuzzB?" I say, "Yeah, what's up?" He's like, "Yeah, you're the Tsunami guy?" So I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, yo, I wanted to go last minute, and I checked the prices, and the prices were crazy. But I spent the 140, and it was whatever." And then I'm like, "Yeah, how'd you like it?" Right. Man told me straight to my face, "Yo, I'm never missing that party again, no matter what."
Right.
I thought that was a testament to what we did, and it's amazing when you could shut up the people that were talking negatively about you. Yeah. It's because I know where my heart is. I know why I'm involved in doing this, and I know it's business. A lot of these people don't really have any investment in me whatsoever, and like you said, don't have my best interests at heart. So I don't take it on to the point where I'm stressing about it. I just work harder, as you said, for the people that have tickets. And that's who's going to take me to the next level, not somebody complaining about $10, $20 price jumps or whatever the case. You're probably not the one that's going to take me to where I need to be to do what I need to do. It's going to be the people that come in there without complaint and thank me for the hard work that my team and I did, right? Now, pivoting to one of the last topics here, because it's been an amazing podcast so far. And there's so much value and gems in this one, especially if you're in this field. When we're talking Toronto, I know you're very passionate about that, and you're passionate about seeing the growth of our industry in terms of Toronto rise on a world spectrum. What are your plans, and what do you foresee or hope to see in terms of Toronto down the road?
That's a great question. That is a really a great question. And there's certain things that I, unfortunately I can't really put out there because they're work in progress.
Whatever you're willing to share.
But there was a time where I used to say, well, why can't we have this event from Trinidad here? Why can't we have this event? And I'm of the mindset that Toronto has its own identity, right? And that identity needs to constantly be refined and get to the level where it's not about getting these events here. It's about these events wanting to be part of the Toronto, the mecca of Caribbean culture in Toronto. So down the road, I think one of the big areas is developing a collaboration of minds, a mastermind of organizers, promoters who want to contribute to a consistent, standardized, transparent process of how we as a Caribbean plan, organize our events, to get us to that level where sponsorship and endorsement for Caribbean events is something that is being chased after by suppliers and sponsors. Not now, you're really struggling because you go to Trinidad and there's sponsorship all over the place. Now there's reasons for that and activations that are there for a reason, but there's lots of non-Caribbean events here that are heavily sponsored. Why can't we as a culture have that level of endorsement and sponsorship? That's something I see as definitely part of the roadmap, getting us to the point where the credibility and exposure, positive exposure of the culture attracts that endorsement. You see, there are many great festival organizers here in Toronto. There are many great festival organizers in the Caribbean culture here in Toronto. Yeah. I think these are the people we need to get to the table that are seeing, just like people have seen Tsunami as formidable, as something that it's really a tsunami. It's coming. It's impacted so much. Get these players to the table and let's talk about building the festival culture, building the event culture as a collective. You mentioned that term earlier, rather than every man for themselves, unless who can outdo the other. That's the only way we're going to be seen as a place where other aspects and other territories want to come and represent or be represented.
Sorry to interject, but I feel like there's a part of it too where our culture is not accepted, especially in Toronto. And I love
how he's just dancing around it.
I don't want to get into the race.
That sounds like a whole different discussion.
But it is difficult to get to a certain spot where we want to be because of our culture. Mm-hmm. How do we overcome that?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with education. I think a lot of it has to do with awareness and experience. Unfortunately, some of those experiences don't always turn out to be the best, right? And it perpetuates a lot more questions about whether or not it is such a great culture. But you and I know it is a great culture. Yeah. Unfortunately, when you look at when you look at the news in Trinidad and you look at certain things that make you think, well, is it education, exposure? Those I think are key. But being exposed to and educated on the culture has to be backed up with the culture itself carrying itself in a way that you want to be part of this culture. Right. You want to experience it. Right. I'm sure everybody wants to come downtown Toronto and see these beautiful costumes and these beautiful parades. What are we doing to make sure that is the experience? Right? Everybody wants to come to the festival event, to the big fete, to have a blast, right? What are we doing to make sure that is what they're having and nothing else?
Great point. And even just trailing back a little bit to a couple things. One would be sponsorship and investments from larger corporations. I think in line with what you were saying is that, when it comes to Toronto, we're not taken as seriously where that's concerned. And in the islands, they get sponsorship out the wazoo. And to me, a big part of that, and something I was told before, I can't remember the exact person I was having the conversation with, but it came up, and it was the fact that that's a huge driving force of finances within the economy of whatever island you're talking about, right? Events, carnival is a huge part to play when it comes to the financial wealth in that economy. But when it comes to that culture here in Toronto or anywhere like here, which is a much larger, territory and not necessarily focused on us, we're a drop in the bucket. Yeah. So when they're thinking of investment, unless it's to the tone of, well, we need to step our Caribbean association up and, get in with them so that we look better. Unless it's that, there's a lot of resistance when it comes to shelling out money for us. A big part of that too is not only are we not a huge driving force in terms of finances in the economy, and we're a drop in the bucket, there's issues such as, if we have these 10 Caribbean events and one of them has a shooting that ends up on the news, now that's labeled for all of us. Mm-hmm. And that comes in line with cutting corners, with not doing things the right way. You should have had 20 security. Maybe you just booked 5 because you thought you'd make more money. And then something really goes down, and then what? Right. You probably didn't book insurance. And there's a whole plethora of things we could talk about. But that falls in line with the second thing that you brought up, which is credibility. How do you think we can build better credibility as entities in this industry and develop more credibility to get into places like sponsorship or get sponsorship and those type of things?
As I mentioned before, communication and collaboration, and doing things right. Right. The key to a lot of the successes in this event diaspora is doing things right, so that remember when we talk about sponsorship, we can't really compare sponsorship in Trinidad to sponsorship in Toronto. Exactly. Also because there's many different regulations and requirements for things like alcohol sponsorship or alcohol consumption in a territory like Toronto. Whereas in Trinidad, it may not be the same, or it may, I don't want to use the word lapse, but it may not be the same as over here. So it's getting an understanding of those things, and what's available, and then how do we present, and what are the requirements to obtain that level of sponsorship, and what is the representation those brands want, and are we willing to provide that There's so many moving parts in getting that sponsorship, but we need to do that as a collective, rather than, this promoter is getting sponsored by this and that promoter is seeking sponsorship from this one. I'm not saying those are bad things. I'm saying as a Caribbean, as a Caribbean festival, as Caribbean festival organizers, we need to be getting together to approach it on a broader scale, but a unified scale, and saying this is how we want to represent. How can you, and how can we help you, and how can your sponsorship help us represent, and elevate this experience?
Amazing. And this is the only way we're going to get this industry past where we want it to go. You know, and we keep saying we want the Grammy, we want this, we want that. Well, how? Yeah. And we can't just keep doing the same thing expecting new results either. We got to make that change, and a big part of that is developing your credibility. Working alongside yourself and you teaching us the right way. A lot of people don't really know, like, the behind the scenes aspect of what we do, but we got a letter from the city of Vaughan actually telling us thank you guys, and we appreciate that you are doing what you're doing for the Caribbean culture.
Well, I was going to mention that because that goes right back to you talking about your naysayers too, right? Yeah. You have, you've executed an event in a territory or a municipality or a township or whatever it is that has come back to you and said, even back to with what may have been, or what we may feel is always a negative perception of our culture, you have that territory come back to you and say, job well done. Right. We want you back. Not only do we want you back, but how can we help you make your experience and your festival even bigger? Right. Now that is a testament to doing the right job, and that is the impact that we want as a Caribbean community. Part of the planning process and part of the administration process was to make sure to fulfill all the requirements of the area that you're operating in, whether you had it in Vaughan or you had it in Brampton or you had it out in Bowmanville, right? You would still apply your way of working and your team's way of working to make sure you have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted, so that you never have a question. You never have someone showing up at your event saying, well, you didn't do this or you didn't do that. I think you remember having building inspectors come on there and spending a lot of time going through everything that could have possibly required building permits, and all their questions being answered. So much so that they stayed there after at the Tsunami venue, just looking at the production. And they said, hey, if you guys ever need anything, just give us a call. I mean, that's impact.
That alone, and even a couple of the employees in that the city of Vaughan, they actually, because my sister was mainly dealing with them, they responded to us after they saw the videos. They're like, wait a minute, we want to come to this next year too. Imagine that. Imagine if we have the actual people running the city of Vaughan in our event.
And why not? Why not in every location that a Caribbean festival is held, that we don't have representatives, whether it be councillors or their representatives, come and experience the culture, that and then endorse it. Right. That's one more step.
And that's education right there too.
Absolutely. It's educating them. It's educating their office. It's educating Toronto or the greater Toronto area about how well we can do these events, so that when you now propose something on a larger scale, they go, yeah, you've proven yourself.
Yeah. And that's going to be huge when it comes to what we have planned down the road. So, Darryl, I think this was an amazing podcast. Yeah. I loved every minute of it, and it's something I'm very passionate about. And as I said before meeting you, I wish I had a form of getting this information, and I was praying for that. Yeah. I was like, come on, where can I find this? And I found the book in human form. And you came and literally have blessed this operation with leadership and just guidance. Yeah. And that, we can't thank you enough, and we appreciate that.
I appreciate the opportunity. I hope that the work we've done with you only makes the brand that's already, I mean, I hear about it through North America. I hear about it in Trinidad. And I hope it creates other opportunities for us to work with other Caribbean entities to elevate as a collective.
Exactly. Now, when we're talking about the industry as we close out, is there any final words you'd like to share, or any encouragement you would like to give anybody, especially those who are aspiring to get into this space?
Wow, that's a big one. That's a big way to close off. I think if I were to give any words, it would be, it's a lot of hard work, right? It's a lot of rewarding work, but you got to do it properly, right? And I say that over and over. I sound like a broken record, but I've seen the side of not doing it properly. I've seen the side of doing it properly, right? It's prepare for the tough ones, the tough times, but also prepare for the amazing rewards. Nice. Because then I get to work with brands like Tsunami and BuzzB Inc. And I'm not just saying that, but you get to see the vision we have being accepted by a brand like yours, or a brand like Private Ryan's Soca Brainwash already, in this territory, that is. And then you see it in fruition, you see it in operation, and you go, there you go. Say something now. Yeah. We can do this, right? So my words would be, just be prepared to do the work and do it properly. Go the full length. And this is not a Caribbean person, but I heard someone the other day, it was actually Matthew McConaughey, and he said, don't half-ass anything. Yeah. Put everything into it, right? And that's what you're going to do. Yeah.
What I heard was there's no such thing as being half pregnant.
Yeah. I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't go there.
Yeah, especially this day and age. Darryl, thank you so much. Amazing episode. We truly appreciate you. Let them know where they could find you on our socials.
It's Team Epic Events, Epic Events Toronto. Okay. We're constantly building our socials. It's epiceventstoronto.ca. You can always reach out to us. I'm sure if there's opportunities, we would love to help. We work on all scales. We work on small scales. We work on large scales. But it's all about elevation.
Nice.
Got you. Nice. And remember, he won't just work with any and everybody. So make sure you have your ducks in a row and you're doing the right thing.
Right.
Thanks, you guys so much. We appreciate you. This has been another episode of the Up From Here podcast. And we out.
Peace.
Thank you.